I know that the Otsutsukification process for Boruto had reached 82% per Momoshiki's dialogue. So Borushiki, when he's fighting Kawaki in the latest couple of chapters, could not have been using any more than 82% of his power if we're scaling him to his highest heights possible. Now there is an element at play to where he could tap into the 18% and draw power from that, but the fact that he did that after the battle, after Boruto's death, is to suggest that he didn't do it before. So I'm going to give the Borushiki who fought Kawaki with his new karma in the latest couple of chapters at 82%. That's logical scaling to me. Now I have to look at the actual portrayal of the battle. Who was winning, who was losing, so on and so forth. So now I'm looking at that and I'm saying to myself, the battle between Kawaki and Momoshiki in Boruto's body, they were relative, they were equivalent, they were equal. So now I'm like, well, this informs me as to how powerful that version of Kawaki is, because if Momoshiki in that instance is at 82% and they're relative to each other in combat, that means that Kawaki is at 82% as well. Now, of course, again, there's context to be taken into consideration with Kawaki. That being, he just unlocked the karma, he's testing things out, figuring things out in real time. We have to talk about that as well. That makes some logical sense. And that could inform as to how powerful Kawaki is. Kawaki under those conditions is weaker simply because of his lack of experience. But once he gets that experience, he can become more powerful than 82% of Momoshiki. I'm fine with that logic. However, we got the version of the character that we got, so I'll use the data that I have to work with, while also factoring in that possibility. If those characters, Momoshiki or Borushiki versus Kawaki, are 82%, with all the context taken into consideration, Boruto dies, and then 18% of Momoshiki is rewritten, so on and so forth, we know the process. That's adding an extra 18% to his 82% that Kawaki needs to account for. Now there is context like always. If Kawaki, via him being new to the power, is stronger than 82%, I don't know how much stronger than 82% he is. Therefore, I cannot grant him an entire 18%. I think that's a little bit outlandish. So I can grant him 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5%, but an entire 18%, that's a bit much. I can't quantify it. It could be, but I think it's reasonable to assume that it's not. You could say, well, that's Boruto's data because it was converted into Boruto's, but because there's actually an Otsutsuki element at play, that is to say that that converted data is still considered Otsutsuki, tells me that Momoshiki's genetics as it pertains to that converted 18% is still in play. That means to me 100% of Momoshiki's data is extracted. The reason why it's spliced the way that it is to create a narrative reason as to why Momoshiki cannot resurrect, but power-wise, it's 100% of Momoshiki's power. I have 100% of Momoshiki versus 82% of Kawaki, which is scaling to 82% of Momoshiki. Unless Kawaki can account for 18% of power, I cannot say he's more powerful than current Boruto. Context: I do not believe that Boruto will have access to 100% of Momoshiki's power. I do believe that there's going to be some kind of mechanic written into the story that prevents Boruto from accessing 100% of Momoshiki's power. I do believe that his body is too immature, he's too young, his body will break down similarly to Jigen if he taps into too much of Momoshiki's power. I go back to the latest couple of chapters to where he has the heart attack and collapse. Why did that happen? I would argue it happened because he was tapping into Momoshiki's power too much, because he was progressively getting more powerful as he was fighting Cold in Karma V2. I don't think it's a coincidence as his power level is scaling up, which is to suggest that he's tapping more into Momoshiki's power from the Karma, that he collapses and his body starts to break down, and then Momoshiki intervenes. I do not think that's a coincidence at all. So I think that is going to be a mechanic that the writers implement to limit how powerful Boruto will be in part 1. The power's there, you just aren't physically capable of accessing it. Again, a Jigen to Ishiki, a Mitsuki to Sage mode. Then how much power will the writers allow Boruto in his limited state, his limited physical capability, tap into? And does that power scale to Kawaki? So then the question becomes, if Boruto tapping further into his Otsutsukification at what we can assume is less than 82%, because Momoshiki would later take over, and then if we scale him to his highest height, use 82%, that means that Boruto, who had the heart attack, had to be using something less than 82%. Boruto collapsing kind of gives us a threshold as it pertains to how much of the Otsutsukification that version of Boruto can tap into. I'm not sure how much he was tapping into. It could have been 60, could have been 70. I do not know. All that I do know is that it was less than 82%. This new version of Boruto post-death says that he can use more of Momoshiki's power, which is to suggest that this version of Boruto is stronger than the version that collapsed with the heart attack, which is also to suggest that he can tap more into the Otsutsukification, more into the power than that version of Boruto that collapsed in the last couple of chapters. So again, I can't quantify it, but maybe this version of Boruto post-death, who has more access to Momoshiki's power, can reach 82% or beyond, where his other version that collapsed with the heart attack couldn't, which would scale this version of Boruto closer to Kawaki. I think that logic tracks. Without me being able to quantify these numbers, I have to work with what I have. With all of that being said, this is what I would argue right now. Boruto will be limited by the writers, and he will not have access to all of his power. I do not believe the writers will allow Boruto, just Boruto, to scale to Kawaki. With that being said, I do believe that Kawaki is progressively getting more powerful. That is to suggest that he's stronger than 82%. He's new with his karma at the time, which is why he's scaling to 82% Momoshiki. But I believe over time, which is indicated in the last couple of chapters, with him activating his dojutsu without the karma being activated, is to suggest that he's further mastering or further controlling or gaining experience with the power, which is to suggest that he's stronger than 82% that was demonstrated back in that fight. I don't believe Boruto is going to scale to wherever Kawaki is right now. I think he only scales with the help of Momoshiki. Because clearly, with Momoshiki taking over, the immaturity of Boruto's body, that is to say that Boruto's young body won't break down with Momoshiki at the helm, therefore he'll be able to tap into more of his power, therefore he's going to scale better as it pertains to Kawaki. That's the logic. Boruto on his own, I do not think he'll scale to Kawaki, with Kawaki progressively getting more powerful as time goes on. But I think Boruto working with Momoshiki, because Momoshiki clearly negates the damage on Boruto's body when he's in control or working with Boruto in the future, that's probably how it will happen. I think them working together scales to or surpasses Kawaki. So that's my logical thread. If that makes sense, it makes sense. If you don't agree, let me know down below.